What is up, everybody? What is up, Niko Nation? Welcome to episode 6 of Division Draftables, our NFL draft series that highlights the outlook of your team and all 32 NFL teams as we transition out of the draft cycle to training camp and ultimately preseason football. I am your host, Niko Chambers, Niko the Draft Guy. You can call me alongside P Dunn, my co-host. We're super excited today to dive into the AFC North, and we'll get this thing ready and started. The Pittsburgh Steelers, Pete Dunn, talk to me about their draft.
It was an interesting draft. I really like the direction they went with Harmon in the first round. A guy that we both understand that it was earlier than we would have liked him to go, but a really good pick with a really good spot. It was, we keep going back to these B drafts. And this is a very B draft. Like it's very average. They did a decent job with the assets they had. They filled a couple holes, and I do think they improved. Did they get so much better? No, they didn't. But they did get some good players. And this team got better because of the draft. So that's a pretty solid B grade for me.
Yeah, I think in terms of the teams with the B draft, it's a little bit higher. It would probably be I don't know how many teams we ranked here with B drafts. It would be I think it would be three or four on that list. I think the Derek Harmon pick was a reach, but I do think he's going to fit very well with this franchise. If you like your guy, you go take him, and that's what they did here. So you can't complain about that. Losing Najee Harris did mean you needed to recoup something on the running back room, and I think the Caleb Johnson pick is phenomenal. Both ranked him number 5, and our running backs are very close at 48 and 52 overall. Can't complain about that. Snagging Jack Sawyer in the fourth,
It's also value.
that's really good value there. And then Will Howard in the sixth. You also can't complain about that, getting those Buckeyes back together. We'll go to their depth chart here. And the main highlight that I see here, obviously, Aaron Rodgers just signed a few days ago.
Finally.
But you also bring in DK Metcalf. So what does that tandem reflect in this free agency for this Steelers team?
I don't know, man. It's really interesting. Like neither of them really feel like Mike Tomlin guys,
Yeah.
but here we are. So I don't know. Maybe this is I don't know. It's an interesting experiment. The Aaron Rodgers experiment hasn't worked yet. Um, so we'll see if it'll work with the Steelers, but um, getting trading, not trading directly, but in a way, getting rid of Pickens and then keeping and then getting in Metcalf with it's interesting. It's interesting for sure. We'll see how it ends up. But it's definitely a different vibe around the Steelers team than there has been in a really long time. So
I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. I don't know if that's trending towards a Mike Tomlin under 500 season or not. But he always finds a way. So with their line at 8.5, that'll be a tough one. I do think the Metcalf kind of for Pickens, one for one, if you will. I think I would give the edge to Metcalf as a receiver. I'm not as high on Pickens as a lot of people are. They're both head cases. So that'll be really interesting to see kind of how they mesh, how really Metcalf meshes with Rodgers, who finally did sign, as you said. Another one of my predictions. I think this is a really good spot for Rodgers. Will it work with Tomlin? That's TBD. We don't know yet. Not much really popping off the page here. With this kind of free agency, as you can see. It's a very similar defense, which that'll give you hope because they had a really good defense last year that got them to that 10-7 mark and got them to the playoffs. So, you can't hate that. How much better are you going to get from Aaron Rodgers to Russell Wilson? That is also very close if you're going to even get better.
yeah.
So I don't know how much this team really has changed. It looks really much the same for me. I think the main thing here is you saw the jump from Calvin Austin last year. They've been talking about Roman Wilson, kind of giving Robert Woods that run for his money as that number 2 receiver. Who's the X factor on this team as a whole? It could be on defense too.
Um, I mean, you'd probably have to. I think I think Joey Porter probably is the best player on the team. If I had to, if you asked me that, I think Metcalf has to be. If you expect to win a lot of games this season, that's what you got him for. And so, yeah, I don't know. I think Caleb Johnson will be the RB1 by the time this season progresses. And then Warren will be that change of pace back. I don't know if there's an X factor on this team, honestly. I don't really see that. So I don't know. Like we've said a couple times, like there's a lot in the air about this team.
We're
Ever.
speechless right now. I don't know what's going on because it's just the exact. It's like a copy paste the exact same team
Yeah.
as last year. There's not much, and I usually there's a drastic, either oh you got way worse or you got way better. I'm trying to give you hope. I don't know how much hope there is. It
I,
looks like if there's hope, you're gonna have a winning season at that 9-8 mark. That's the big hope. That's your main hope that Tama can do it. We'll transition here to your top five picks. Pete, what do you got here?
well, the Harmon pick's awesome. I mean, he's going to be great on that interior. Got big pass rush upside. Will play the run well. A really good player that will come in and play well. Like what I have him in my year one impact. I also think he has a lot of room to grow. Good athlete. I think I love my D tackles, and he's gonna be pretty awesome. So, yeah, Black. It's a guy that full transparency, I did not watch in the pre-draft process, but I've heard a lot of things after the draft about him. Kid out of Iowa, real big. And so, a guy they got down the board that I've heard a lot of good things about. Best value is going to be Jack Sawyer. They got him in a great spot. Great player, great locker room guy. He feels like a Pittsburgh Steeler, not
100%.
Metcalf and Rodgers. So I don't know. Anyways, moving on. And then Caleb Johnson's going to be top sleeper. I think he probably has the third best situation out of all the running backs in this draft. I think it's going to be really great for him to go in there. Like I said, I think he's going to be RB1. And I think he's going to get a lot of really good carries and make a lot of good production out of it. So,
It'll be really interesting to see there what they do with their running backs, knowing that Warren obviously is their guy. I would have to agree with you there. Caleb Johnson's my favorite pick in this draft, and I think he's going to be the year one impact. I think he will be the RB1 at least as the season progresses, if not by the start of the season. Um, Derek Harmon's going to be your guy who's going to be here for a long time. I think of kind of a Cam Hayward. He'll kind of follow the footsteps of Cam Hayward here. Um, Best value, Jack Sawyer. I mean, my number four defensive end, picked in round four. That's great job. And then sleeper, I don't know how much of a sleeper he is now, but with the wide open quarterback room before the Rodgers thing, I had Will Howard, really as the main thing there. So the main question I have in terms of storyline, how can this team go from good to great with Aaron Rodgers?
Aaron Rodgers, he has to go back to the player he used to be and not the player he was the last two seasons. You hope that the Metcalf thing works out and that he brings a dynamic to that offense that George Pickens didn't bring. Really, a guy that I'd keep your eye on is Roman Wilson, a guy that they had pretty high expectations of last year. Got a lot of draft hype last year, and was a really big receiver name coming out of Michigan last year. So a guy that will play probably pretty primarily in the slot. Might push outside for some things, but probably to the Z or the Y, not really the X. So, going to be interesting to see whether he can take that step in year two. Like we've talked about, receivers year two is a huge year. And so he's a guy that I would keep my eye on that would bring a different aspect to that receiver room. But it's got to be Rodgers, man. It's got to be
Gotta
Rodgers.
be. And that wasn't that long ago. We talk about the MVPs. That was not that long ago. I mean, the Jets version of him versus the Packers one a few years before he left. Completely different players, but I'm going to trust in the four-time MVP to have a good season and lead this team a little bit better than the Jets curse that was going on last year. So we'll cycle in here to this Cleveland Browns draft, very offensive heavy, but like one of the few drafts where every single person here going down this list is ranked.
Yeah, yeah.
So talk to me about this.
It is a fascinating draft. Like great, like from the I want to love this draft so bad. I want to be like, oh yes, giving this an A. but it's so up and down. Like Mason Graham, A plus pick. Quinshon Judkins, A plus pick. Carson Schwarzenegger's probably a D for me. I didn't like that pick at all. I know you're higher on him than I am. Like I didn't like that pick at all, especially at the value they got him at. Like not great. But then I love the Quinshon pick. Like I think he's gonna be fantastic in that offense. And then I don't love the Fandon pick at all. Like I didn't like that pick. And then you take Dylan Gabriel over Shedeur Sanders. But then I love the Dylan Sampson pick. But then you take Shedeur again. Like it's like literally as high and low and high and low as it could possibly get. At the end of the day, I came to the realization like they still got a re lot of really good players. And even the players that I didn't exactly love, like Schlesinger, like and Finn, and like I still think there's roles for those players on this team. So I'm not like anti this draft. I just think it was very odd. They went about it in a
Yeah.
really interesting way.
I think it was odd but unique. And one thing that we're not talking about, but it doesn't really go into the grade at all. But they got a first round pick for the
Yeah,
Travis Hunter trade,
for
so that's
sure.
another thing that
Great
like
call.
we
Yeah,
did
good
we did
call.
not even talk. That didn't even go into these grades as A minus and a B plus. But like that's just a great job by them. I love it's very Browns-esque for them to why not try with two quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I love it with everything that's gone on with their franchise. But we'll go into their depth chart here. Kind of more of the same with the offense and really defense. Besides the holes that they kind of threw in there with their draft picks and then a few free agents. Does anything stand out to you here?
Yeah, it's one of the weirdest quarterback rooms I've ever seen. You've legit got, and not even talking about Deshaun Watson. Like, it is fascinating where that's going to go, where it's going to end up. I think, I think the reason, a big part of why I gave that grade a a B plus instead of being higher on it is like very similar to what we talked about with the Dolphins. Like this team really needed to go a direction on the offensive line. Like really, really, really badly needed to get some offensive line in there, and they didn't. Like you've talked about a couple times with a couple different teams, like looking 1 to 2 years down the road with this team and looking at where that offensive line is scary on
Oh
a
yeah.
team that's built its identity on that offensive line over the last few years. So they needed to get some more guys in there and they didn't. So that definitely took a hit on the grade. Although I do think they got some really good players in this draft.
I think their free agency was very underrated. You see Demonte Casey, Rayshawn Jenkins, Jerome Baker, JTS, Lee Collins, even Tevin Jenkins, Kenny Pickett. Like some of these guys, even Cornelius. This is a very underrated free agency. They don't really line up as starters at the moment, so it's not going to jump off the page. But I will say that was underrated in that aspect. Obviously, we'll talk about this quarterback conundrum that they have going on in a second. But I want to talk about the offensive weapons. Besides Jerry Jeudy as the receiver, nothing much really going on. They did sign Deontay Johnson. Hopefully, he can go back to his old self. Um, but there's just a lot of weapons around. You throw in the running backs, you got a three-headed monster at running back now. And then even tight end, you got two dogs at tight end. How is this going to align? What is this team going to look like? And it really does depend on the quarterback. But let's say that one of the two quarterbacks or the quarterback starting will be Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett. What do you see in this team?
Um, I think I see a team that's which makes the quarterback room even more fascinating. I think they're with the allocation of the first round pick next year, is preparing for a Arch Manning, a Drew Aller, somebody in the draft next year, and is kind of setting that standard and trying to make a soft landing for whoever that's going to be, which makes it even more fascinating that they drafted Gabriel and Shedeur this year. So, no, this team isn't ready to go win now, but. I do think they have pieces that are going to be really good. I think Quinshon's going to be on this team for a long time. I think Mason
Oh
Graham
yeah,
fantastic for this team for a really long time. So it's it's really interesting. There's a lot of good here, and there's a lot of improvement. Like, we talked about adding wins. Like I think this team added a couple wins, and I think they really added a couple wins over the next few years, which is good. That's a thing you want to say about your offseason.
for sure. I think that an interesting thing. I think Harold Fanning is gonna. You talked about it a little bit with Elijah Arroyo for the Seahawks. I think Harold Fanning is not going to be a traditional tight end number two just for this team. I think they will throw him out there almost at receiver at some reps to kind of compensate for their kind of okay receiver room. I think that'll be really interesting. But yeah, this direction of this team, if they're rebuilding them, this is an interesting way to do it. Talk to me about your top five, Peter.
My favorite pick was Mason Graham. I almost put Quinshon because I love Quinshon. He was a top 30 player for me. I think he's going to be fantastic. But Mason Graham is arguably one of the best players in this draft. Not really even arguably, he is one of the best players in this draft. And he's going to be plug and play guy that's going to be around for a long time. Draft Diamond, Dylan Sampson. I think you got two running backs for the next 5 years. And that's a really awesome thing to do in a draft, especially with the late as you got Dylan Sampson. And so best value, obviously Shador. I don't know what's going to happen there, but the fact that he went so late, I kind of have to put him at that spot. And then, like you said, sleeper, I think Fannon's going to get a lot of sneaky production this year, whether that's as a slot receiver, whether that's, I don't think he's going to play much inline tight end, but he's going to be a move tight end for sure.
Yep,
And I think he's going to get in a, like you said, in a room that doesn't have a lot of structured targets, he's going to get a lot of them. So.
I 100% agree with that. I went with your guy. Favorite pick was Quinshon. I just obviously Chubb leaves, but I mean, if you're gonna replace him with Quinshon Judkins, I mean, that's a good problem to have. Draft Diamond's gonna be Mason Graham. Being able to kind of trade back and get him, that's amazing. Getting that value. Uh, of course, top sleeper here, Dylan Sampson. I think he's going to obviously once. I think Jerome Ford will be out of here in a year or two. But it'll be Quinshon and it'll be Dylan Sampson for the next 5 years, like you just said. I think Carson Schwessinger is going to have a really good impact at linebacker, and I think he will have the biggest impact on this team this year. And then we'll kind of talk about Shadir here. Best value. Just hands down, it's a wacky way to do it, but you are Cleveland Brown. That's what we predicted. So I don't know how it goes, but honestly, let's talk about it. Who will win the quarterback battle this year? Who will be the quarterback week one? And will Shadur and Gabriel both be on the roster?
No, one of them will be on a different team. Um, and I think Flacco starts the year, and I think whoever is the opposite of what we just whichever one of the rookie quarterbacks stays will finish the year. I think either Shador, which I'm probably 80-20 Shador, then Gabriel. That Shador will finish the season starting the football games for the Cleveland Browns.
I think Shadur, I think he's going to also be on the team. I think it's going to be Kenny Pickett to start the year. But Shadur Sanders, you know, whirlwind for what happened for him, and I think that this is going to make him really underrated. And I'm really interested to see kind of how he handles this, how he responds to this. But I'm kind of excited for him because this is a wide open team, a wide open room, and I think over time he will be the guy. And I think there will be no question about it. And we'll look back in years and be like, damn, and I wasn't even that high on Shadir. But I'm excited for him. I think it's a good spot for him. And we'll transition here to the Baltimore Ravens, who, they did it again, P. Dunn, every single year. Just a phenomenal draft. An A and an A minus. Dissect this for me.
Well, I mean, you got two fantastic players at the top. And that carries so much of this grade because truly there is once we got past round four, there's a lot of guys that neither of us watched, neither of us knew a lot about,
Exactly.
but they got two unbelievably good players in their first two picks that are going to be really, really good players in that defense. Mike Green is a guy that I was very high on, very, very high on, and would have gone a lot higher if it wasn't for the off the field issues. And then thinking about Malachi Starks and Nate Wiggins and freaking Kyle Hamilton running around on that
It's
back end,
unreal.
insane. Like it's mind-boggling. So they did a great job getting players, and truthfully, I trust this coaching staff with the picks that they made down the board. So
I'll go down the list a little bit. Bilal Cohn, round six there. Um, I think that's just one of my sleepers in this year. I think he's going to do a lot of good things for this Ravens secondary. Go even farther down, Aeneas Peebles, really underrated defensive tackle,
correct.
who kind of comes into kind of like for the first time in a while, an open defensive tackle room besides Matabikwe. So That'll also be interesting. Roger Longerbeam has a really good opportunity. And then, of course, they draft a kicker with the release of Justin Tucker. So that'll be interesting to see the direction they go. We'll go straight to their depth chart here. More of the same with this team from last year. The roster turnaround is pretty identical. They have obviously you look down here towards the secondary and a lot of changes. However, everything else is kind of the same. Is there anything that stands out to you, Pete?
Well, I think it's a good thing that everything
Yeah,
looks the same. I mean, this team was really good last year. Adding D-Hop, not sure how much you're going to get out of him. Kind of feels like a Julio Jones at the end of his career type of
yeah.
thing. These receivers tend to do that once they sputter out. And so, the Ravens have really never really prioritized that receiver room, and they still haven't. They've got a guy in Flowers that we both like. Bateman, I feel like every year is like, oh no, this is the year. This is the year. Bateman's going to do it this year, and he never does. So
Yeah,
they brought back Ronnie Stanley, which is a big signing. He was going to get paid a lot of money elsewhere, and he got an extension here, which is good. And so, like we said, like this team. Yes, they look the same, but they also added Malachi Starks and Mike Green to that defense, which is like so scary. So
it's terrifying. It
it's
just you
good.
see, obviously, this is like we just said. For a roster to turn around like this, that means this is the last year or two before contracts do get crazy. So I think this Ravens window is slightly closing. I think they got 2 years left. Obviously, as long as you have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, I mean, you're going to be good. But like true contenders for the Super Bowl, I think this year, next year, they are 100% in that conversation. I look here at the outside linebacker, the Mike Green, obviously that draft, I think Kyle Van Noyen's last year, this contract, I think he'll be out after this year. Mike Green will slide right in there. I think that's simple. I think Aeneas Peebles will slide into this nose tackle spot where Travis Jones is. Um, and then obviously Malachi Starks, I think he's going to be a starting guy off just rip, I guess. Just immediately he's going to be the starter there next to Kyle Hamilton. Um, Obviously Nate Wiggins and Humphrey. That's just a really good secondary. I'm excited for DeAndre Hopkins to see what he does this year, and then obviously the tight end group, a waning Mark Andrews, if you will, and then Isaiah Likely, who's underrated as hell, and then you get Keaton Mitchell, which you obviously hurt last year, but you saw what he did the year before. This running back room is just disgusting with Lamar, obviously. So it'll be crazy to watch. Talk to me about your picks, be done.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Green could not talk enough about how talented he is, just strictly football talent. It's just where I had him ranked on my board. I kind of was so infatuated by him that I just kind of disregarded the off the field issues and was like, I like that's not my job to figure out. I'm ranking him off of his talent, and that's why he ended up as
Right.
the eighth player. Draft Diamond and People's a guy that we both thought went way too late. Really high floor player, going to slide in really well at defensive tackle there. And Emory Jones is a guy that he's not going to play tackle for this team. Frankly, he's too short and does not have long enough arms, but they also have two good tackles in Stanley and Rosengarten. So he's a guy that I always projected to play inside, and they got him, and he will play inside for them. So I think he's going to be a really good player for them. Maybe not this year, but maybe a couple years down the road.
I would have to agree with all of that. Of course, you see Mike Green on here twice. That tells you all you need to know. He's my favorite pick. Just second round is just unbelievable value. I think the ninth defensive end slash edge player taken and my number two edge prospect. There you go. Just value. Ravens do it every year. Do it so well. They did it so well that I had to give them two sleepers. The Bilal Cohen and ESP. We'll talked about them both earlier. Those are also needs for this team. That's a thing that it's a theme that this team kind of always resorts to, just the needs, and they get BPA for needs. And that's what gives them the great grades that they get every year. And then, of course, draft diamond and year one impact is going to be Malachi Starks. It's just a perfect match. I think it's a top five perfect match. You talk about the Jalen Monroes to the Seahawks and kind of different matches for their team. Malachi Starks is such a Raven, such a great football name, such a great player. Um, and it'll be interesting to see how this Ravens team kind of takes them into that culture. The main question with this Ravens team is how can they get over the hump? How can they continue to fight for the Super Bowl, but ultimately, like, is it the Ravens' time?
I think so. I mean, with as close as they've been, um, as close as they've been, like they've been so close. And all you did this year was get better. Like you got better this offseason. And so now, like it's go time. You know, you've got Lamar. I don't know how many years Derrick Henry has left. I also said that 3 years ago.
Yeah,
So he's an alien, like literally a robot. So it's gonna be. I think that. I think this is, like you said, like part of a closing window, but not really in a negative way. More of like a no, like we can go do this, like let's go win this thing. So I'm interested to see if they take advantage of that or not.
I think they have a really cool opportunity. I think, not everybody's talking about the Chiefs as they have in the past. Honestly, I think the Chiefs are going to have a down year. I'm manifesting that because they can't be this good for this long. And I think the Bills like are up in the air. I wouldn't be surprised if they have a down year also, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're the best team in the league. So, nobody's really talking about this Ravens team, and I'm excited to kind of see what they do. This would be the main year though for that Super Bowl push if there is one anymore. And that'll trend us towards this Bengals team who went to the Super Bowl a few years ago, but that's seeming ancient at this time period. With everything going on with this team, we'll get into it all right here. P Dunn, how do we feel about their draft?
Well, um, I mean, I'll tell you what, I was really high on Shamar Stewart. I had him as the 10th player in this draft. And there's this is about the only landing. This was pre I told you just before. I remember we had a conversation about this before, everything's been going on with his contract. And I told you this is the one landing spot that he could have gone where I was like, I don't know if I see it. Like, I don't know if I see it working out. And it was before all the contract stuff. And now there's all the contract stuff going on. And so I mean, there's genuinely stuff going around. Like, are they not going to sign him? Did they burn this pick? Like, is and that is not a Shamar Stewart. When this first, like, yes, Shamar Stewart has an ego. Like, that's been kind of
Yes.
established already. But this isn't really his fault. Like,
Yeah.
they're
Like
actually like trying to screw him over.
it's
And
crazy how the internet works because like at first I'm thinking, dude, like sign the contract. Like, and it's crazy how it paints him to be that ego guy, and I think he does have an ego, like you said. But like, this is just seems like another defensive lineman, just being botched by this organization.
And it's really eerily similar to the Miles Murphy situation a couple years ago. Not necessarily on the contract side of things, but definitely on the way he's panned out. A guy that needed development that was really good and really sought after, and it didn't really work out. And so I hate it because I had a lot of faith in Shamar Stewart, and I don't want to knock him before he's played it down for the team. Like I wish him nothing but the best. But even going to some of these other picks, like you got two really good linebackers. And that's it. Like
Yeah,
that's it. That's all I really like about this draft. So like I I don't know, man. It's quite the draft for sure.
yeah, I would have to agree with you. I really do like the linebackers there. I'm a little bit higher on the interior offensive lineman that they took. Interested that they kind of doubled up on positions here. I don't really know what needs they could have done better. We'll kind of get into that with the depth chart. But going back to the Shamar Stewart thing, for all the people who don't know what's going on, can you give us the best kind of, I don't even know, explanation of what is going on with Shamar Stewart and the Bengals?
Yeah, I mean, usually the comparison I would make to this is Travis Hunter has not signed his rookie deal yet. Travis Hunter is also at camp and has been practicing with the team and has very good relations with the Jaguars. No one's mad at each other. They just haven't agreed to terms yet, and that's okay. Like that happens. Shamar Stewart, however, on the other hand, has not also signed his deal yet, and he has not practiced in a Bengals uniform. The Bengals are trying to, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Bengals have put a clause in his contract that if he gets injured, he doesn't get paid. And so Shamar Stewart was like, I'm not signing that, like
Makes
rightfully.
sense. Yeah, like
And so that's kind of the standstill they're in. The Bengals, frankly, as the Bengals have always been, are being really cheap. And it's not a great situation. It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. I assume something's going to happen and they're going to agree on something. The Bengals are going to do what they should have done and give him the contract he should have gotten. Um, but I don't even know whether it's going to work out after that. Like I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot up in the air with the Shamar Stewart situation for sure.
Yeah, and obviously, if it is that, that's a perfect reason to not practice. Because if you get injured, you're not getting paid. But saw something the other day about how he could potentially get redrafted, which is I've never heard that, and I've
I've never.
covered the NFL for a long time.
Like, this doesn't usually happen. Like they don't organizations don't pull this on their players. This isn't a normal thing to occur.
Basically, he could sit out the whole year and get redrafted in 2026. That would be
Absurd.
ridiculous. I don't even know where he would go in next year's draft after all of this mayhem. Um, but it's just underwhelming as usual. And it's so unfortunate for a Bengals team that is so offensively sound to have these defensive issues every year. And obviously last year, I mean, Joe Burrow would have been MVP if he didn't have a JV defense. Like the numbers that he put up with Jamar Chase, like it's unbelievable. We'll go into this depth chart here. Um, just like other teams in this division, more of the same in terms of the roster turnaround. Not many holes, which means like with the Ravens, contracts are going to start coming up and you're going to have to start paying people. They did sign Chase. They probably lost a lot of money by not paying him the first time. Um, you bring back T. Higgins. Um, what else is there kind of hopes, ambitions, aspirations for this Bengals team?
I don't know. I can't tell you. I think that they tried to do their best to go ahead and get establish that defense a little bit better, and I don't think it really was as impressive as I think that they wish it would have been. They need a lot of steps in the right direction, especially if Trey Hendrickson's going to stay on the roster, which has been another thing that's been up in the air for the last few years. So they've got a lot of work to do with their three-man scouting staff. It's yeah, it's quite the organization.
It's and in a ultimately loaded AFC North. This is one of the more competitive divisions in terms of just rivalries and just it's just really just some good teams in it. And I don't know, like I feel like this Bengals team is really just one fix away from really being a serious contender year
They
after
they
year. I
they
mean,
were a serious contender. Like they were really good, and then they nothing changed except for their defense wasn't as good. And now you see what happens.
I don't know what exactly went wrong last year because they have notable names all over the defense. But you know, nothing to that secondary, which gave up millions of yards last year. That was a shocking thing to me. I don't even know what to say. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do here. One thing I will note, we talked about it in previous videos. We talked about it kind of in this. I'm looking for that jump from Miles Murphy, the first rounder from a few years back. Uh, you got two defensive ends holding out, essentially. Um, you need to go step up and be that guy who wants a starting spot. I don't know the disconnect there. I don't know if he can do it or what the deal is, but if Trey Henderson is really going to sit out until he gets his contract, that Miles Murphy's the starter, and I'm super excited for that. He was a guy I wanted the Seahawks to get way back, um, and he hasn't really had his opportunity for whatever reason. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets that this year. We'll kind of go in here to your picks. Pete, don't talk to me.
Yeah, I mean, best value and impact are going to be Shamar Stewart because simply he's the best player that they have on their roster coming out of this draft. Demetrius Knight and Barrett Carter, both guys that, like we talked about, are going to be good players. They're good linebackers, and when you want to build a defense, that's a good place to start. And then Dylan Fairchild, a guy that their offensive line needs some work. So I'm hoping you're higher on him than I am, and I think the Bengals as well as Bengals fans are going to hope that he's going to be able to come in and play an interior spot.
100%. Same type of deal here. I'm high on the Demetrius Knight Jr. pick as a linebacker. I think he slides in better than Barrett Carter does. However, Barrett Carter is going to be the sleeper here. I'm not as high on Shamar Stewart as you are. I think if anybody would be a bust into this first round, I think it would be him. and that has nothing to do with the contract stuff. I was always feeling that way on him. So I don't know if this is the best spot for him, like you said. Best value, Jalen Rivers. I ranked him up there, and they got him. I don't know what it was. It was pretty late though. So that's what I would say about this Bengals team. We talked about the front office. That's the main storyline. Nothing really more else to say. We'll go straight into it. Is there an offseason winner for the AFC North?
I think I'd probably go the Browns because I think they added more wins just because the Ravens win a lot of games. There's not really a capability to add a lot of wins. The Browns definitely got better, but the Ravens had an awesome offseason.
I think the Ravens. I would give the Ravens that offseason winner. The Browns. Great draft. It's just like direction, what's going on. It looks like they took a lot, they almost didn't trust their picks, and they just took double of everything,
Yeah.
which is not a terrible thing considering you're trying to find a franchise running back and quarterback. So I don't hate that, but I would give it almost to the Ravens. And then going into the offseason loser here, I don't know, Pete. What do you think?
I mean, I think it has to be the Bengals just because of everything that's happened. It's been storyline after storyline and everything that's gone on with Samar Stewart, even not even really liking that pick in the first place. Yeah, definitely not ideal.
They just did nothing to address that secondary that gave up so much last year. Um, so I'm interested to see what they do there. We'll go straight into the win totals to kind of cap it off. Ravens set at 11.5. The Bengals are 9.5. Steelers going back and forth, but they're settling at 8.5 after the Rodgers move, and then 5.5 for this Browns team. What do you see? How do you rank this?
I think I'm going to take the over on the Ravens. I'm hammering the under on the Bengals, unfortunately. And then, I'll take the over on the Steelers. I think they'll get it done. I'm never going to count out Mike Tomlin. And then I will take slightly over on the Browns. I think they win 6 games this season.
Interesting. I'm gonna go over on the Ravens. I'm gonna go slightly over on the Bengals. I think the Bengals last year, like they were 9-8 with, I think Burrow got hurt or I don't know what was going on, but just it was a mess, and they somehow found a way to get 9 wins. So I think with a little bit clearer of issues, hopefully they get these defensive ones resolved. I'm gonna have to go over on that Bengals team. I'm gonna go under on the Steelers slightly at the moment. I think if anything can change, that'll change drastically when we go down the road and do more videos that have to do with kind of the schedule release and kind of when we get into that. I think that could definitely change. But at the moment, I just don't see it with that Steelers team. It's the least amount of juice they've had in a while. And then the Browns, I've gone back and forth. I'm going to go under though. I don't know who the quarterback is, and I just don't. I don't think they're going to trot out the guys they should. I think they're going to go with either Flacco or Pickett, which is probably what they should do at the beginning. But I feel like if anything, they'll keep them in for too long. They won't give the rookies the chance, and then that'll kind of cause them to be under. Of course, noting that they have that Jaguars pick next year, so they may, depending on how the Jaguars do, they could use their pick. They can use the Jaguars pick to get Arch Manning, Drew Aller, but that remains to be seen. And that'll be it for us in Division Draftables. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. The AFC North was a great one. It'll be a tight one. And stay tuned for more videos.